Hello and welcome back, everybody. Game 1 in the books, and 100 Thieves Academy clutching it out with the victory. I don't even know if I'd call it a clutch. That was just pretty standard performance from 100 Thieves Academy from what we've been expecting. They like to make early plays, and that's exactly what we saw in this Game 1, Cubby.
You know what? The first one, they needed the mulligan, as we like to call it. The first side did not go their way, but after that, I like what 100 Thieves had for this comp. That first pick of Thelios, taking all these dive tools like a Nocturne, a Rise, it allows you to cheat tempo and attack both the side lanes, and that's exactly what 100 Thieves were able to do. And honestly, it was off the fact that both these teams seemed a little bit nervous and blundered early. I mean, we had 100 Thieves watch that first dive, and then Team Liquid had a lead. They opted into taking 3v4, and once 100 Thieves got back in the game, they did not let their foot up off the gas, and we really saw them attacking sides with whenever they had those cooldowns up throughout this entire game.
I think that really just goes to show how strong of a mentality Chad has looking at this next dive here. You see him mess up the first dive, but then he comes back stronger. He dives the top side again. He dives bot side, and as this Nocturne, the paranoias felt like they were going on the entire game, and there was nothing Team Liquid Academy could do to draft against that.
The rotations of 100 Thieves, they always had the correct number of champions at the play whenever they wanted to make it. Luger played out of his mind as well. Gage, I believe you called him the Delta of the team, the difference maker, as it were. 9-1 and 9 on the Xayah pick. And like so many of these replays are slow-mo because Luger does something cool with that Xayah ult. And I think, like we said, going into the day, 100 Thieves Academy, Chad is the engine of the team in the early game. And then once they get to these stages, they just have such strong performers. And then they're just incredibly coordinated too, even though, yes, they do have subs with Gamsu and Chad coming in here for Proving Grounds. It doesn't feel like they've been playing this tournament with subs because this kind of coordination, this is impressive considering this isn't actually their initial Academy roster.
I mean, this is just what you get when you have so many games to practice with this roster.
So
They've been playing this since the beginning of the tournament, and it shows just how confident they are going forward. And, you know, you could talk about Luker all day. I think he played amazingly. Poom as well just looked really, really great in this game, ending 0-1 and 18 on the Rakan. I feel like there are some draft changes that Team Liquid Academy is going to have to make, and Game 2 is going to be pretty spicy, I think, in comparison to what we saw.
I could imagine the spice increasing a little bit. Fun fact, Luger 919, Poom 0118. So they both had the exact same kill participation and the same KDA, technically.
Lovers duo, you know?
Yeah, exactly. They're really role-playing the characters right there. And, I mean, yes, you can maybe layer, like, a couple of criticisms, like the early game and then this dive in particular, but outside of those nitpicks, this was a very clean game coming in from 100 Thieves Academy. But when we look at Team Liquid Academy, what we had been saying about them going into this is we're going to learn what these 5 players look like together. After this Game 1, are there any definitive statements that we can make, or are we still kind of holding out judgment? Gage, I'm going to give this one to you first. Kind of what's your temperature read of Team Liquid Academy with Dokla and Inori?
All right, let me throw out a wild statement here, Steve, so stay with me on this. This is different than how Armeo and Jenkins would have played it. So
Really?
That's the wild read that I have for Team Liquid Academy. Otherwise, it seems like they're really playing for objectives. You saw how forward they were going for dragons. They made the bot lane teleport play pretty early, and even going for that Rift Herald after getting a little bit of tempo in the game that ultimately tripped them up, still felt like they were aiming for those middle of the map areas as opposed to aiming for kills, which 100 Thieves Academy, that's all they do.
Yeah, and I really think that, like, with Team Liquid, I know that, like, even Chad, like, the respect that a lot of these players have for Armeo and his ability to lead in a game and shot call. There are a couple, like, plays there, like the 3v4 that Team Liquid opted into, which was the first replay that we saw in the package, and trying to, like, rotate top, getting caught out. That is something that 100 Thieves, like, they do punish a lot. Poom loves his mid hovers and really gives a lot of help to Ryoma, but it felt like this was a team trying to play the same comp. I mean, Camille, J4, champions that we've seen a lot of out of Jenkins and Armeo in this tournament, and just weren't able to find the same success that we've been seeing out of them. So it is one game. If there's anything that, like, I think that I picked up, it's that overall, like, the team doesn't want to change too much of their game plan, but I want to see how things change up as we move forward, because obviously TL have some bouncing back to do, and I know that, like, with J4 and Syndra into Rise, I think one of the big angles that TL were looking to kind of, make waves in this game, was breaking open the game through mid. And because of that hover from Poom, and because Ryoma was able to turn a couple of those early ganks, I think they only were able to find a kill on him once. And that's a pretty big win, honestly, when you pilot Rise in those two champions.
I think one thing that we can note from Team Liquid Academy that you had been saying maybe we'll see is playing a little more through Yon. They drafted the Aphelios for him very early on in that draft. Maybe in-game didn't necessarily play through him as much. But we want to take a quick moment to actually dive or a little bit deeper into one of the dives that happened in the game. We have two of them prepped. The first one is the initial dive that 100 Thieves Academy gave. Now, Cubby, you noted that there's a couple of specific interactions here as we pull it up that don't quite go how 100 Thieves were hoping they would.
Yeah, so the way that I would want to play out this dive is that actually Gamsu starts the party, and he lands the stun and is able to use his double dash out, but he gets stunned up, and Chad starts the tether. So he actually takes aggro. Gamsu still takes 2 tower shots from that, and because Gamsu wasn't able to pump out the damage because Doka landed a nice stun, it's a pretty big misplay from 100 Thieves, and this ends up going wildly awry, which gave Team Liquid that early game advantage.
But, like you said, Cage, mental was still strong for the Thieves, because then they pull off this one.
There's just not a lot you can do with this composition against what 100 Thieves Academy have drafted, right? Once you have the flash down from Yon, there's just nothing you can do against a dive from a Xayah, a Nocturne, and a Rise. Look at this. Luger's even tanking through the back part, but when you have ultimate as Xayah, you feel invincible, and honestly, Luger looked about there if we're looking at his entire gameplay.
I just love that Chad was not discouraged from going for those dives. We continued to see 100 Thieves make plays happen under turrets, looking for these aggressive styles with the Rise and the Nocturne bolting in together. So I want to start talking now back onto Team Liquid Academy's side. Cubby, I'm going to give this one to you. I know you know Coach Spawn. He's probably giving a chat to the team right now as we're getting ready. What adaptations are you expecting to see, if any? Whether it's in draft, picking what they want for the Rift itself, or bans, anything that they need to take away from 100 Thieves going into Game 2?
I mean, first off, the first adaptation we see is that they're actually opting to take red side this game. So it seems like both teams having, or at least TL, having the higher seed got to pick Game 1, so already swapping the sides. That tells me that I think they want counterpick somewhere else, and I think that one of the things that really threw a wrench in their plan was that Dokla, someone that throughout his history as a player has been someone that is a big, like a carry player, taking Camille Jarvan, trying to Kingdom mid. He wasn't able to find any of the timers or the roams to attack Ryoma in the mid lane. I think a lot of that is credit to how Poom is able to hover and how Ryoma is able to play around the mid lane intelligently in this one. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a switch up, and instead of trying maybe to Kingdom mid, something that is pretty difficult, in my opinion, to do against 100 Thieves because of how much Chad and Poom sacrifice for their laners, I think they might try and attack one of the side lanes. And when you have, or when you're going up against like Renekton, Nocturne, Rise, it's really tough to do anything in the side lane. 100 Thieves had full prio there. Even after they got behind early, they were still able to find all those plays. TL didn't have the answer. So I think going over to the red side, I think the game plan is going to be, let's get counterpick for Dokla. Let's make sure that Yon maybe has a little bit more of a comfortable matchup, is able to get punished quite as easily on the Aphelios going up against something like Rise Nocturne, and try and see if they can play out a better game state from there. So I think that the changes I expect is potentially getting rid of the Rise from Ryoma, and then maybe trying to do something with LeBlanc. I know it's been a champion that's been Harry's most played in this tournament throughout the split, and that might try and open things up so that they can, instead of trying to just attack mid lane and put the 100 Thieves mid laner down, attack mid lane to get him a timer and get Harry into the other lane, something that Team Liquid has done well.
Okay.
I think it, yeah. For
wow,
sure.
that was a big breakdown. Cubby went full coach mode right there. Gage, follow up.
How do you want me to follow that up? Cubby's a genius. He's a smart man, and I don't know how much I could add to that. I agree with the take Aphelios away from the priority list. You can still draft him, but certainly as a first pick seems a little bit strange. And also maybe getting Ayla onto that Braum, I feel like that's a really solid pick, and maybe that doesn't maybe that synergizes really well with the Aphelios, but maybe you also think about something a little bit safer, such as the Ezreal, which, although not top tier, still pretty good in this meta, and I feel like would fit what Team Liquid Academy is going for.
Yeah, and I like how you're talking about bot, because in that first draft, we actually saw, Ziggs bans being thrown out, a Varus ban as well, so it's very high priority for both of these teams. So it seems like 100 Thieves, they want to take away some of those poke champions so they can find more of those 2v2s, something that Luger and Poom are very, very comfortable and confident in. So I kind of like how you're identifying that, maybe swapping off the Aphelios, getting something like a Varus or a Ziggs so you can open up things to play through Dokla or attack another lane. Once again, trying to get Team Liquid more proactive in the side lanes. Could be something they look to adapt and change up in this next one.
I mean, I think it's hilarious that we're talking about, like, don't go back to the Aphelios when they literally got a 2v2 kill in that lane. Like, Jan and Ayla actually beat Luger and Poom in a 2v2, which, Cubby, you had said you loved this. Even as the play was coming up, you're like, oh, here's the cheese. Here's the 100 Thieves cheese. And then they actually died in that moment, despite the fact that Jan, I don't even believe he had flash up at that moment. Or maybe it was Ayla that didn't have it, but one of them had already burned their flash in an earlier play. So I think that's kind of crazy that we're even saying that based on how that early game went. But it to their credit, Luger and Poom, incredibly strong 2v2 lane. They are, arguably, if not just definitively, the best bot lane that we have here at Proving Ground. So, you know what? I can still buy into that argument. But with that said, we're going to be setting it to a short break because I'm hearing that we are getting ready for game number 2 between Team Liquid Academy and 100 Thieves Academy. 100 Thieves up 1-0. Latigris and Joshi on the other side of this break.
Welcome back, everyone, to LCS Proving Grounds. We are about to get into game number 2, winners finals here. Team Liquid Academy against 100 Thieves Academy. But despite a lead early on by TL, it was 100 that came out on top in a very convincing fashion, Joshi.
It was a very, very brutal game coming out from 100 Thieves. They looked really good in terms of the macro, and once they moved past some of the early foibles that they had, it was just complete dominance top to bottom. They just had to run the same plays over and over, and, it kind of looked like football, right? At that point, when you just do the same thing every single time, and if your opponents don't have a reaction to it, just keep doing it.
Even looking at some of those repeat moments, like many solar flares coming down right as the response of the Xayah to ult as well, like that continuous answer and readiness from 100 Thieves in each of those fights worked out so well to their favor. And now going into our second draft, it's 100 over on blue side, TL over on red. So we'll have to see how that ends up shaking things up and what they bring to the table.
Not a whole lot of changes coming out so far. We saw a lot of these bans, but the Varus, I believe, is actually new coming through. And the Aurelia was banned in the second half last time by 100 Thieves Academy. And I feel like now we're going to start seeing where the different strategies are going to come through. Because Team Liquid Academy, with Dokla on their team, have typically been focused around the top lane. They really want to make sure that he's strong. They really want to make sure that he's able to split push later in the game. And he was not able to do that in this game, despite a couple of early game plays.
Yeah, and whether they decide to go in a different direction with the pick or what have you, TL, I'm sure will want to have him in a comfortable position. There's so much of the time where it was just that 1v1 going in the top side because of all of the attention that 100 were dragging to other portions of the map. And we'll see if they can disrupt the rift in that way here again. The first lock-in, Rise, worked out well for Ryoma in that last game. One of the most consistent picks for him throughout all of Proving Grounds because of the way he's able to affect the entirety of the team's play.
And I know Wuri's going to be in the chat throwing down all the copy pastas with how good they are actually playing this champion. Ryoma has been very strong, but as the Velos gets locked in, we also note that one of 2 champions that were banned away as a counterpick to this rise, the Irelia, is already gone. And the question now is Harry going to be playing the Cassiopeia that we know has been so successful for him up against other rises? And as they're really taking their time, I feel like the question is, do we have to pick it now or can we pick it a little bit later? And the answer is, we don't have anything better to pick now. We're going to pick it up and make sure that Ryoma is uncomfortable.
Yep, they don't want 100 to be able to swipe that away on the next round because of how prominent of a pick it has been for Harry. So making sure that they have enough power from the Aphelios as he gets stronger later on, from the Cassiopeia as well. And then on 100 Thieves side, also wanting to keep with that comfort. We already mentioned the Rise, but they still have some flexibility in what they can bring through here because there's a lot of junglers open for themselves. There's not so much aside from the Varus targets towards that bot lane, which is why now the Ezreal up and open for them to lock in.
Both teams have picked strong backlines already, Gabby, and now we see some of the initiation starting to come through on the side of 100 Thieves. Now, I'm always entertained when you have a Rise on the team, unless you're making these big team-wide plays with your ultimate. Typically, the correct way to use it as an initiation is you throw somebody else. In this case, last game they had the Rakan, and they also had the Nocturne. You don't really want to throw Nocturne with your ultimate. You can do it with Rakan, but it's very easy to throw it with the Jarvan. And in order to respond to this, it looks like Team Liquid are actually picking up some counter engage in the Brahma. Not the best thing at actually getting fights started, but very good at creating space for the backline.
Yeah, and they had taken away that Rakan Thresh on the other side. Braum just being such a consistent pick for a lot of the teams in that supportive position, especially when you can just try and get those stacks, get that lockdown onto somebody to allow the rest of the team, when you have that nice backline to follow up, you can keep them a bit protected, offset against the projectiles that the enemies are going to bring through. Also, a note on the J4 that's been brought out by 100. We did just see it from Inori, and while he was trying to make things happen, one of the things that we're talking about a bit in the break time that I'm most curious about is how he is able to affect the team play in the way that Armeo has been able to do in the past. And that's not just on him, that's in how does this team communicate? How are they able to make do with what the jungler brings to the table? And when on the J4, we didn't always see that cohesion that you want from the team as a whole to follow up on those ultimates and lockdown. And 100 Thieves on the other side just had so much escape. Whereas for 100, Chad has noted before how he wants to play in service of the team. In fact, Cubby, with some of his investigative reporting, Chad had shared with him how much he wants to prove that he is worthy of Academy in the future and the opportunity here. So when you're on a pick like J4 that can really facilitate the rest, get them into that strong position, then we could look and see some pretty crazy stuff coming from 100 in the future.
I think you touched on it a little bit there, right? Like Chad and Gamsu, they've had a little bit of time to come in, and they were filling in for some big shoes, right? Tenacity and Kenby, a couple of very strong Academy players that are looking to make names for themselves, and they were already going to the boot camp with 100 Thieves out Worlds. Now, as we see the top lane and the jungle from Team Liquid, Jenkins and Armeo, also doing the same thing, starting to head to Europe, they're losing some of the major playmakers for Team Liquid, and that becomes very difficult. So Dokkan and Ori, while they might be individually talented enough, it doesn't look like the communication has yet gelled to the same degree that we've already seen coming in from 100 Thieves. And as we see Dokkan going back towards the Camille, wouldn't be surprised if we saw some very similar picks. The Shen was banned out last time. The last time they also picked up the Renekton, so you can only ban one of these two if you also want to be banning the Derek.
Yeah, and Shen as the lock in here means that Gamsu's going to be on a comfortable pick for him throughout this Proving Grounds run. And Dokla wanting to stick to that Camille, still has a lot of that dueling pressure, still somebody that can split push, but you're not as worried about trading back and forth and damage in the lane with a Renekton.
Ooh.
Oh, all right. We get to see a bard, baby. Joshi, this is going to be a lot of fun, especially for someone like Poom that really loves to roam and bring those magical journeys to some crazy places.
It's also really good into the Braum, but now we got to see what the last pick is going to be. It is the Rek'Sai. We saw this hovered up from Inori earlier. We know that he's very fond of these early game aggression kind of characters. We saw the Jarvan come through. Now it is the Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai even more indexed on trying to find some of these early game plays, but the Bard and Braum interplay is also going to be something we have to be paying a lot of attention to. So the last game was pretty explosive early on in the game, and I'm expecting this game to be even more so. Otherwise, Team Liquid's Inori might start falling behind in a way that's irreparable.
This is going to be a very interesting matchup when 6 is hit too, because you could just suddenly see a big old party somewhere, whether it's Inori making a play across the map, or then obviously the Shen having that stand united available for him. Realm Wars, things could just get everywhere across the rift here, Joshi, and it's going to be pretty exciting.
Lots of fighting. We got lots of initiation tools. Again, both these teams have pretty much everything they need in order to succeed. It's all about how they actually play.
Now, with all of that being said, we will be ready soon enough to see the action in game number 2. We're going to kick it to a break, and on the other side, we're taking to the Rift ourselves. Welcome back to LCS Proving Grounds. Game number 2 of the winners finals. 100 Thieves Academy walking away with the win at the start of this series. But Joshi, I think if anyone's able to pull it back, it is your Academy champions of summer, Team Liquid. Despite some interference in the roster, they do still have that stable mind, that stable force behind them as a team.
They do. They have Harry and Jan, who have been very consistent performers for them throughout the entire Academy split. And now the question is, can they get some of that stability back? But it also doesn't look like they're necessarily playing towards that. Look at the fact that they are going with this Rek'Sai on Inori. He wants to make plays early. I know that there was a long conversation a long time ago about a couple champions that actually get their ultimate at level 2. They were Gragas in the jungle, E-Flash, and Rek'Sai Flash Knockup, right? It is so powerful and so hard to play around these abilities that you effectively get a free gank and a free flash at least once per game. So Inori is going to be really impactful to see where he actually goes with his level 1 ultimate.
And see how Chad decides to respond as somebody who has played the jungle fairly selflessly and often makes plays for the lanes fairly early, whether he is in the vicinity to try and match Inori or maybe get some advantages elsewhere if TL decide to make an aggressive play like that, because 100 Thieves also love to try and put their best foot forward right at the start of these matches. And over on this bot side with this 2v2, I think it's somewhere that you're always going to have to be looking with these two teams, the way that they play this, also aggressively going for those trades. And often whoever hits level 2 will try and make that play go through. So keeping an eye on where that happens.
I also want to point out something that just happened towards the mid lane. Look at the bot lane 2v2, we got to look at the mid lane 2v2. We saw Jarvan go from red to immediately standing in the bottom side line brush. And now as the Rek'Sai is doing the top camp, also takes a little bit of damage, but Chad lost a little bit of time while he's Inori going straight to farming. I was expecting top lane to not going to go for it.
TL, first ones to hit level 2 here, bot, so they continue to push this way forward, continue to get a little bit of poke. Perm can be somewhat squishy right now, but does have those shrines available for some of that sustain, whether it be for himself or Luger, which can be very effective when you're on the opposite side, but also in the mid lane, and Inori hovering around, going through into his jungle. But Harry and Ryoma, big focal points for their teams. A lot of times in TLA's victories, it is because of the resources being funneled into Harry, having himself on the Cassiopeia to just dish out so much damage and having an ultimate very effective in those team fight scenarios. Whereas Ryoma stepped up so much in these recent series as a mid laner and one of the strongest forces for the team in general.
generally, like, they've both been very good, but I'm also surprised to see some damage being traded back and forth between these two top laners. One, it remains relatively even, but at the same time, neither of these junglers have actually appeared in any lane. We saw Jarvan go for a potential counter gank mid lane before returning to his camp. Now, he's top lane, he's potentially going to get spotted out, but he's too smart for that, Gabby! He's going to be coming around and waiting the full 10 seconds for his E to come back up.
Yep, because that ward in that bush wouldn't have been able to spot him. He also got the scuttle too for some additional vision for any potential rotations. The hook shot has put Dokla into the center of this river. A nice route from the W onto Inori. So I was just gonna back it off there a little bit, but that was looking very dicey for a moment. But some patience executed by both of those sides. No one wanted to get caught out in some of the shrouded territory.
Feels like Chad probably went a little bit earlier, right? He gets spotted by the minions as he starts rounding the corner, which gives Dokla a little bit too much time to respond. He also didn't have his E up by the time he was actually rounding the corner. So, ends up being a bit of a wash in the mid lane and in the top lane. Nothing really expended except for the teleport coming through from Dokla. It's also going to get matched almost immediately by Gamsu. And as both these junglers just go back to farming, we have to ask the question, which one of these is actually going to be more useful later on in the game? And typically, people think of Jarvan as falling off really hard, but hey, when you're compared to a Rek'Sai, you're almost always going to be more impactful because it looks like Inori likely going to be going for some kind of lethality build, which does a lot of damage early in mid game, but doesn't do a whole lot later on when you die.
And especially when that kind of surprise tactic that Rek'Sai has at her disposal starts to lose some of its luster when the teams start grouping together. And then on the side of 100, it is going to depend, like, how do they play around this, right? Because Shen offers some of that additional pressure from elsewhere on the map, but who's going to group, who's going to just dominate in the team fights as time goes on? But Inori hanging out around this mid side, so is Chad. You could get the 2v2. It's warded on both sides, even with the control. Inori goes and throws to the back. Grounded Ryoma is. Harry goes in. That's the first blood from Chad. Can they get the lockdown onto Inori as well? Ryoma had to flash away. 2 kills for 100. Ayla with the rotation backs off under the turret. 100 have 4 members hovering around this mid side for any potential follow-up.
That was so funny, watching like Harry chill around the corner, right? He thinks that he's the one baiting for his jungler, but it never occurred to him that the opposing mid laner is also the one baiting. Inori ends up going for this play, and Ryoma just able to create distance, and Inori using this flash ultimate that I dubbed it earlier, not going to be finding a whole lot off of it, and Ayla still coming up. They thought that this was going to be a winning fight for them. Unfortunately, the Ryze Cassiopeia matchup isn't necessarily because of how strong it is early game. It really comes online when you have a little bit more items and have the movement speed to actually dance around Ryze. It hasn't happened just quite yet, and we didn't even have to see Gamsu ult.
Oh man, 100 Thieves just off to such a great start right there. And it can be a bit disheartening where, as you noted, Joshi, if you're the mid laner on TL side and you think that you're the one setting up the play and everything gets turned back on you for a moment, but they want to try and return some of that pressure onto Ryoma. There's Inori comes through. Ayla coming through with the W as well for some additional protective layering, and TL get their first kill.
Okay, I like that a lot. I like the fact that Team Liquid are now firing back, right? We were looking at 100 Thieves in the first game as the one who were in a deficit, and they felt like they needed to make plays. And this time, Team Liquid coming in from a little behind, not as behind as we saw 100 Thieves originally, but they're still willing to go for these ganks. And as Dokla creates some pressure up in the top lane, we are still seeing Inori with signs of life, and that gives us a lot of hope how Team Liquid are looking to play. Again, lots of questions as to how Inori's champion pool has changed. So far, he's been very aggressive with 2 champions, but he needs to make sure that it works.
Meanwhile, for 100 Thieves, just a slight gold lead for themselves here. As far as what's going across the lane, yeah, it's small because if you look at the individual level, Harry's starting to build a little bit of that CS over in the mid lane. Fairly even on that top side as we continue to just see that trade back and forth between Gamsu and Dokla. Gamsu's already built into that Bramble Vest just to be able to give himself an extra additional layer of protection for any of the dives there to come through. Luger right now was isolated under the turret because Pyrum is on the opposite side with Chad and Ryoma. They go through with the Blast Cone beyond the target of the E. There's the Cataclysm. Blasts Yon to pieces. And TL fall fate to 100 Thieves with those plays that they love to make and catching them off guard.
God, I love watching this 100 Thieves play with the Rise, with the Bard. They're making unusual moves around the map that you can only really make with these champions. You saw the Magical Journey was used by Poom to get across the Bluba wall to try and dodge away from any vision that Team Liquid had put down, and now they're going to get themselves a kill, get themselves a play, and Ayla has to be very careful. He does see where Chad is, but as the wards disappear, it's unclear where he's actually going to go next. So honestly, I've just been really darn impressed, Daddy, with like how 100 Thieves have been playing around the map, how they have all of these plays that they're looking to go for, and how willing they are to actually go for them. Inori trying to find some counterplay on the map. If you can't deal with anything else because there's a global available, you attack the global. But look at this, Gamsu knowing he's the play because his jungler's on the bottom side of the map, not even going to be in lane for Team Liquid to have an opportunity to dive in.
Yeah, one of the greatest lines of success for a lot of the teams within Proving Grounds has been who has the most synergy between their jungler and their support. There's so much pressure to roam within the current meta as a support and make those plays alongside the jungler, and that's exactly what you saw from Chad and Poom working into that jungle effectively together so that they can just set up the rest of the team for success. And here now, Poom towards this top side, ready to assist Gamsu if needed. There is a control ward over in that bush, which Poom is sweeping on this side, goes through with the Magical Journey. Dokla hook shots to safety. The Tempered Fate gets the flash out of the TL top laner.
Again, great play coming through for 100 Thieves. They're getting advantages across the map. Even though Gamsu hasn't yet picked up the CS lead, the fact that he is doing A-okay in this lane while all the action has been happening on the rest of the map is a good testament to how well that this team has actually been playing. And as we start to see people returning towards the mid lane, again, we're seeing another theme running through this series. Team Liquid isn't as willing to rotate Yon out of the bottom lane, instead goes to the place.
Chad goes for it directly onto Harry. Ryoma's there to just the damage as well, and Ayla for the return. A Glacial Fissure is attempted here, but it's 100 Thieves collapsing upon TL some more. Poom ends up getting a little bit of a bite from Inori here for the return kill, but it has been quite the scrap around the mid lane.
Okay, Ryoma doesn't look like he's done. He wants to find this kill onto Inori, but hey, Tremor Sense pretty good.
Flash over, gets the lock with the W. What a nice rude knock up from Inori. Tries to slash his way out of this one, but it's Ryoma that comes out on top.
Okay, normally I say players don't believe other players, but this time I didn't believe Ryoma either. I didn't think he's going to be able to make that play, but he's already got the damage coming through. He's got the tears stacking up, and he was trying to prevent Inori from walking top lane and dropping this Herald to get counterplay onto the Shen, who just left the lane. Dokla is going to be getting one play, but overall, I feel like 100 Thieves are just covering all of their bases pretty consistently, and even here, they're the ones who actually get this play started because they're able to move the German around a little bit more effectively. Inori tied up with Poom, but that just means that Harry doesn't have anybody protecting him. So they are able to just jump on him, not a whole lot. Ayla comes through, but again, just Ryoma does so much damage. This matchup in the Cassiopeia Rise is not necessarily a lane counter, becomes more effective later, and Ryoma, again, just knowing how fast he is, how much damage he can actually do to this Rek'Sai, and we can pick up another kill on the backside.
Yeah, the way he's able to stack up that flux, make sure that he gets the stun from that Rune Prison too, and the confidence that he had to continue for that play is what you want to see when you're in this winner's finals position, where that kind of advantage can do a lot for 100 Thieves to be able to continue this pressure across the entirety of the map. There is a response though from TL's side. Has the Herald to drop down. Poom goes over towards that top, but because of that rotation, Ryoma finds himself between Ayla and Harry, collapsing here in that mid side. So they want to offset him as much as possible. The Herald crashing into the top.
Also, I mean, the Herald doesn't actually crash. Inori looking for Poom.
Gets the knock up, hook shot to close the distance. Continuation through the Magical Journey. Poom brought down 40% HP, but he can swag walk it out. Yeah, nice prevention there.
Dokla so upset that they went to get it. Nah, just kidding. We did see that at the same time, Poom was up top lane. He was able to use the ultimate to prevent the crash from doing any damage to the structure. We just got pulled away by the fact that Ryoma was getting ganked by Ayla, but this is a situation where, again, 100 Thieves covering all of their bases, right? You can't actually try and crash this Herald top lane because Bard is up there. Bard is going everywhere, and this is kind of one of the issues with the Braum and early picking it when people have picks like the Bard available. If you can pick this really heavy roamer, Braum isn't really able to make dives happen on the bottom side of the map really easily as your Leona, your Nautilus, your Thresh. And so it just means that Jan has kind of been left in this isolated 1v1 against Luger and is currently behind.
That prevention of Rift Herald is probably one of the most prime uses of Bard anyways, and coming back into the meta, so you can just deny any of that focus onto those neutral objectives. And speaking of neutral objectives, the Dragons spawned here over on the bot side. You can see the fight for vision from both of these teams. A couple control wards in favor of 100 Thieves, one of them offset by a control from Team Liquid, and the ping starting to come through from 100. They want to collapse and try to draw some of the pressure there. We do have the ultimate and the teleport available from Gamsu, available from Ryoma. So with the security of all that utility to them, 100 Thieves get their second Drake.
I really like the fact that Team Liquid, not looking to necessarily contest it, don't even come over, really. They, take a little bit of time, like, do we want to fight this? We need to be in position if we do want to do something, but the opportunity never presented itself in Dokla. Now seeing Foom up on the top side is going to have a little bit more trouble actually doing damage to the structure. He has to back off, and instantly, as soon as 100 Thieves finish doing what they need to on the bottom side of the map, they transition everybody up top. Look at this, all 4 members, except for Luger, are already here, and Luger still very happy in this isolated 1v1. And now, as Dokla thinks he might have some control over the lane as Gamsu backs away, might just be proven sorely wrong if he tries to go for a fight.
Gamsu's got his mama, he's got his cousin, he's got the whole fam here to try and answer Dokla right now. Even a hook shot does get you out of one initial ultimate from Chad, the flash away too. So for Dokla, this is nice. Sit under your turret. You know the pressure that is here from 100 Thieves. Can TL try and make something happen on an opposite portion of the map? That's exactly what they tried to do here mid. The knock up directly onto Ryoma, gets stunned out by Harry, and the kill is effective. Tempered Fate coming in a little too late.
Just barely in time, they're able to find that kill before Shen is actually able to join, and it creates this big opportunity for Harry to start being the carry of Team Liquid that we were hoping that he could be while he's actually on this Cassiopeia. I'm just really impressed, again, that Inori is able and willing to go for a lot of these plays, and now Team Liquid, as they transition towards the bottom side, they should be the ones who are actually going to be picking up this first turret, and they've actually evened up the gold as well, something I hadn't even noticed. This game is actually, at least temporarily, Team Liquid favor.
Team Liquid is always so great at punishing these moments from 100 Thieves where, yes, they get the flash from Dokla, but they don't get the complete execution. And because of that, TL, they pressure mid, they take out the mid laner, they pressure bot now. That's a turret to fall. First turret at that in the entirety of this game here. And that wave will also be pushing in their favor. And over on the top side, though, 100 Thieves trying to get some play for themselves. They start up on this Herald. They're forced to back off of it, though, because Inori and Harry ready to rotate and join Dokla for any unwanted action.
I know you were talking earlier, Gabby, about the screams that you love hearing come out of Rek'Sai. I also love like that predator noises, that.
Yeah, she's a funky one.
Just going around with like that tremor sense, and so I just got a glimpse of it there, and I'm glad. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, for show us that.
She sounds like my tummy when I haven't eaten for a while.
I feel that. I feel that. Hopefully not when she's attacking things, and just the tremor sense, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that. But you know, sometimes you just need to understand her language, and I can relate to Rek'Sai's way of communicating. Oh man. But I'm just happy to see her when you see her, because I remember when she was released, and obviously she's underwent quite a few changes since she was brought into the Rift, but just these real monstrous beings really always pique my interest when they come to the champions.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. Small point coming through. We'll get to that after Dokla finishes the fight.
Dokla, once again, the target of Chad and Boom. He got enough survivability of his own, even holding on to the shot if needed. There's the slows from the Cosmic, but in the end, Ayla and Jan are there if needed to rotate. An attempt from the True Shot Rush, but it's not going to connect.
All right. So, ultimately, I was surprised that they were willing to go for that, right? Braum and Jarvan do decent damage, but not enough to necessarily lock down a Camille at this point in the game. thing I wanted to talk about is Divine Sunder is being overbuilt, you guys. It's being built on like every champion ever, and yes, the item is not bad, but Trinity Force is just a higher damage item right now, you guys. And we are seeing it come through on Luger in the bottom lane as the Ezreal. He has the Hearthbound Axe, which builds into Trinity Force and not the Divine Sunderer. And notice right now that there are not any real health stacking tanks. The closest we're going to get is Dokla and maybe a little bit Ayla, right? It's a situation where he gets the extra mobility, he gets a little bit of extra damage, and he should be able to rather consistently pump out enough in order to keep himself alive, especially with Gamsu's ultimate in his favor, that he will actually be able to kill Dokla a little bit faster in a lot of these fights. And I really like this adaptation coming through. Luger doing some magic.
And Luger in general is somebody that we're going to have to keep our eye on in these next coming fights, like the one that can bust out now because it's 20 seconds onto that Drake. There's the TP coming over from the TL side, and Nori, somewhat focused by Pym, uses the magical journey to rejoin the rest of his team. But it is a 5-player pressure here from the TL side around mid. We know that Gamsu's still holding on to that top side, has the ultimate, has the teleport available, and now TL, after doing their best to pressure over towards that mid side, now that the dragon is spawning, they're turning their attention towards that objective. No warding around tier 400 though, so they're going to give this up. A common tactic for TL to come through on dragon number 3.
I really like the play from Team Liquid. They did a couple of the steps correct, right? You gotta push this out, and because they killed the wave coming in from 100 Thieves, there's no way for 100 Thieves to actually hit the mid lane turret on the backswing. Instead, it forces 100 Thieves to just kind of leave, but it's so hard to actually watch into Braun Cassiopeia, and without the tools necessary, without the willingness to just throw out ultimates from Chad and Plume in a very even situation, it becomes very difficult for them to actually play that through. And now with the Rift Herald, Team Liquid are the ones playing much better on the map, at least for now. They pick themselves up the 3rd dragon. They also pick themselves up the bottom lane turret with the Rift Herald, getting, again, 2 kills worth of gold to the people who are actually there. And because Gamsu was pushed in so much earlier, Dokla's not even going to lose his top lane turret. So this game, again, whoever's getting the early game lead, Gabby, I feel like they're not necessarily going to be the ones who are actually going to be winning. It comes down, again, with these very even compositions to who plays and executes on the mid team better.
A lot more swings back and forth in the leads between these two teams of game 1 and game 2, and it can come down to something like, oh, well, maybe a play like this. Chad goes in over the wall directly on Tion, throws down the ultimate, double TP, 1 from each side. True shot barrage thrown down by Luger to get as much poke as possible. Nori and Jan brought out of the fight because of their HP, and now Harry taken out too. That's a big threat for TL that's no longer there, and 100 Thieves feel happy about that, so they use the Realm Warp. They make their way over towards this Baron again, but there is Dokla directly in their jungle. Someone is set up for the flank, and the remainder of TL are ready to collapse. There is some vision established, 400 Thieves, but can they keep on this? Do they feel off? They're still being brought down low into the backline. Dokla goes. Ayla brought down low. Magical journey from Boom onto the outskirts of it. Dokla finally gets the hit from the Baron. He is taken down. Gamsu getting the credit for that one. 100 Thieves turning this. Ayla on the retreat. 100, a bit different than the last Baron plays we saw in game number 1, but a successful Baron play nonetheless.
Oh my god, the balls on these guys, Gabby. That was so confident. That was so confident that they just went for that. Normally, okay, so first off, this looks like a repeat of our previous game, just with the sides flipped a little bit, right? Yang kind of getting caught, but Harry's the one who ends up paying for his sin. But I actually just want to look at the Baron fight, right? Because after they get 1 kill, after they kill Cassiopeia, they're kind of low. They don't have that much health to actually play. Chad goes down really far, and Inori is still up. He has smites available, and normally when you go for these kind of plays with a 5-on-4, you're doing it in order to try and get the turn. You're trying to kill the other people that come for the fight. But 100 Thieves, they don't do that. They actually move back into the pit, which signifies they're not looking to go for the fight. Team Liquid is forced to go for the actual aggression and go into the pit because Team Liquid, 100 Thieves are the ones looking to burn, and they win everything in a situation that was super, super tense. They were just so confident in their ability to actually execute on a difficult play that they're rewarded beyond what anybody could have expected.
Don't ever ask me to play a game of chicken against 100 Thieves because I don't think I would come out on top in that one based on the way they just executed that. Holy cow, talk about standing by your guns for sure. But TL also standing on by. They saw that 100 Thieves over in this mid side were pushing up the lane. So Inori was hoping that they might overstep a little so that he can throw under and get the knock up and yada, yada, yada. But in the end, 100 Thieves have been really paying attention to not going too far off of plays and making sure they secure the advantages and then keep themselves in safety's way. Ayla steps on up. The magical journey lands onto Jan. They're going to be the follow-up. There's the true shot. There's Cataclysm drops down. Glacial Fissure in the response, but a heavy knock-up onto two members of TL. The answer is Gamsu gets the kill onto the enemy ADC. Both bot laners have been eliminated. And 100 Thieves, once again, just getting their way of things in these team fights. Double kill for the top laner. It's looking 100 Thieves positive today.
Oh boy, every single time they're still going, and now they're looking for a little bit more. They're going to be shredding through these structures, and they can also back away and pick up a dragon at the end of it. They're going to be able to get a reset in after they take down this inhibitor turret and probably the inhibitor as well. But I also feel, again, Gabby, that we're kind of going back to what we just saw in Game 1, where Jan, whether he's too far forward or his team isn't protecting him, either way it results in their AD carry dying, and that gives 100 Thieves so much pressure on the map. They just brute force their way through. They get onto Jan, and unfortunately for Jan, he only has one flash. Whenever the Jarvan ultimate goes down, he's only got one way to get out of that, and that's on a 5-minute cooldown. Chad can do that every 60 seconds. And so we just see they're able to lock him down. He walked a little bit, quote-unquote, too far forward, and here just gets jumped on. Doesn't have a whole lot of counterplay. The rest of the team trying to create space for him, but they're just not able to do it at this point in the game. Jan ends up going down to this Aphelios that they've taken twice for themselves, maybe looking a little bit too immobile for them to actually survive the onslaught of 100 Thieves.
Boom, so great on him to be able to catch him with his ultimate right there at the start, and then Chad making sure to follow up effectively. So Jan, even as soon as he can click anything, can't really go anywhere because of the lockdown that 100 Thieves were going for. And Harry, despite being the only one to survive, didn't have an impact beyond that once the rest of his team was killed. And now 100 getting that dragon. They're on Soul Point, and they are back in the driver's seat. 5K gold lead for themselves at 24.5 minutes.
They have all the damage. They have so many tools available to them at this point. Shen has the ultimate back up, so it wouldn't be surprised to me if 100 Thieves went for another base-busting play as Luger just taking maybe a few more turret shots than he wants, but he also keeps the wave alive. And he's got the red buff, so he's not going to be hurt too badly. So maybe that was actually intentional. Either way, it still results in them picking up the turret, but here, they're also the ones who are forcing Team Liquid into a dangerous spot. How does Inori respond? How does Doppler respond? They don't have a great way to get to the damage dealers. Luger knows that he's not the focus of his team. They're not going to be peeling back to keep the Ezreal alive. They're going to keep going forward on 100 Thieves, and we're able to see just how effectively 100 Thieves, again, have been able to play the map. Team Liquid fired in the mid game, but when it comes to, push and shove, 100 Thieves are coming up every time.
And a lot of it just by opening up that mid lane. I mean, that inhibitor is already down, which gives them that confidence to be able to continue pushing up that wave over on the bot side. And TL now spread thin. It's a 6-3 turret score, which is not necessarily always the turrets that you're thinking about. It's the way that you have to play the map afterwards, though, because TL's wards become a lot more defensive. They have difficulty really reaching out to the outskirts of the map without risking getting caught out, especially with some of the mobility of 100 Thieves. As soon as they see a play at the ready, they can just get everyone right on site with the TPs, with those ultimates as well. So 100 Thieves continuing to apply the pressure here, as their focus now is just to usher these waves forward, as Gamsu has been continually doing over in that top side too. Doppler forced to spend more time with his team now as a security measure.
One of the things that we know Team Liquid was very good at when they had Jenkins and Armeo on the team was they were actually very, very good at playing from behind.
Ooh, Roma ended up flashing, gets caught by Inori right now. Now on the offset because Luger dashes on forward, gets a nice mystic shot onto him, but the blast cone keeps the jungler alive. True shot sidestep by Doppler. Oh, that was a close one. Glacial Fissure lands onto the enemy mid laner. Harry marked down low though, and he found the time Poom and Gamsu. So the rest of Team Liquid now ushered together as a unit, but Luger, he's a lot more healthy than the rest of them. Ayla, one shot away from death. Chad is on the pursuit, flashes in to get the ultimate down. Doppler now again throws down the headstick ultimatum to get the kill onto Poom. Blast cone to keep himself into safety, but he's on the wrong side of the map, and Luger wants to try and find this last kill. Cannot follow up with an ultimate, so we'll see if he tries to get this here. Arcane Shift to follow up a little bit on this distance. But Doppler, that's the thing about a Camille. Uses a TP to make sure he can basket out. it! Luger hits him, says, I know exactly what you're trying to do. But really, Dokla was just knowing exactly what was going to happen with that pursuit of Luger and tried every best effort that he could to keep them at bay. Because that wave, everything was pushing in over for the 100 Thieves.
Yeah, there's something funny actually happens in here. I feel like 100 Thieves are so confident in their ability to actually win this fight because Ryoma and Luger are doing so much damage that Chad actually stops to hit a couple minions on his way over into this fight. Maybe that's him A-moving, maybe that's just him having so much confidence in the rest of his team, but I mean, the confidence is well placed. Even in this 4v5, they're coming out ahead. Ryoma's able to buy time with the stopwatch, and because we get these two isolated members, the fight looks a little bit closer than it would otherwise be, but as soon as Luger has an opportunity to come back into the rest of the fight, it becomes really basically impossible for the members of Team Liquid to stand up to the amount of damage he's able to do because they're just behind, right? This Ezreal has the Frozen Heart, he's got the Trinity Force, he does a lot of damage. It's also very, very difficult for everybody but Harry to actually do.
There was a lot of time where both Luger and Jan were left over towards that bot side, farming away, and we saw a lot of Ryoma's ability to affect this map early, but now that Luger is around, that's always another follow-up threat that you're going to have to worry about on the side of Team Liquid. The second Baron was taken by 100 Thieves during the course of that replay, so that's what, 4 Barons, I believe, in these first 2 games for them going into this, and now they once again have those Baron-empowered minions. They can continue pushing through, even using ultimates like True Shot Barrage just to start to cut through this a little bit more and consistently push forward.
Yeah, the one thing that 100 Thieves are missing on right now is the fact that Shen might be able to be bottom lane, and it looks like they're starting to pull back, but they also have an Infernal Soul that they can play for. You know, the Baron gives you a lot of tools. They still have 2 minutes on it. That's plenty of time to get the Infernal Soul and everything else, right? They can still just hold people here, and looks like Ryoma is probably going to be actually soloing out the Dragon. This is a small opportunity for Team Liquid if they want to take it, but they don't have any flank opportunities. Their composition is a little tough to actually get 5-starred on their terms, and look at this, Ryoma going to be picking that up, and he's going to be shifting bottom lane to pick up all the farms. 100 Thieves, the bottom lane wave doesn't even crash. They're not going to be losing almost anything off of it, and again, showing how effectively they're able to play around the map, especially preceding all of these objectives.
Because of that way, ooh, we might get a little action here, though. Dokla has Gamsu on his tail. Blast Cone, you can see it coming, both positioned on both sides. He blasts on over, but guess what? There's a lot of 100 Thieves around here, even if Gamsu can't get him. There's Chad, there's Luger. Luger even comes on forward with the E, tries to get the Mystic Shot, not quite long enough. So Dokla still just ushering his way onto the blue side, hook shot to make sure he only takes 1 shot from this turret. Ryoma is here, but this should be an escape for him.
Okay, well, props to Dokla for living and wasting a lot of the time of the Baron, right? There's only 40 seconds left, and at best, they might be able to impact the mid lane inhibitor. But it's not necessarily solving a lot of Team Liquid's problems. They still have to deal with the fact that there's now an Infernal Soul 100 Thieves have picked up. There's still the fact they are down 7,000 gold. They're getting out range. Jan doesn't have his flash up, and that just means it's so easy for Chad to try and catch him out. Ryoma sees a Nori. They're not going to be able to catch him just right there, but now they are pushing in every single lane. Shen has ult, and it feels almost like a checkmate coming from 100 Thieves.
And they're doing their best to keep them disoriented, prevent them all from clustering around this base, while everybody except for Gamsu is here at the ready with the Baron onto this inhibitor. They're going to be able to break that down. So 100 Thieves just making sure that they secure all of the advantages that they have gained thus far. And hey, look how easily they can move across this map. Again, no vision for TL. It's scary territory for them at this point because that's what happens. You get rooted by the Rise W if you even try to step up to this. So TL have to keep their tail between their legs if they're going to be careful here.
It's so difficult to walk into this team too, right? Again, they have to kind of throw Dokla and hope it's going to be enough. Otherwise, you're relying on 100 Thieves actually going to be engaged. But can you even survive the initial burst we're seeing from this poke? That's very difficult. Look at the damage that Luger's able to do to these members. And now they're just waiting for another wave to come through. And then 100 Thieves are just going to repeat the process. People have to find something, but it's so difficult with this composition on Dokla, on Inori, to find something.
100 Thieves making it look like clinic work the way that they are ushering these waves and buying their time before the next one comes through. There's the ultimate, the tempered fate onto there. Okay, Nova goes in, throws down his ultimate as well as Braum doing the same. They do get some of the knockups, but Chad is there to return to Ryoma, getting a kill onto the enemy jungler. That's already for that phone for Team Liquid. Jan, you've already been so vulnerable before. Look how vulnerable you are when going against the entirety of 100 Thieves. They win out on the fight so convincingly that it is time for them to target those Nexus turrets. Game 1 was into their pocket as soon as they full committed, and Game 2 looks like a lot of the same for the team that has been scrapping their way through the entirety of this bracket. And guess what? Is it not proving grounds if you're not going to have just a little bit of fun while hanging out in their base? Get your dancing on, get everybody all in the mode of celebration if you're a 100 Thieves fan here today, because they are definitely making that face at them. Let's go. Game 2 in 100 Thieves book. Let's kick it to a break and hit you at Game 3 after.